Hello, welcome to another episode of Varsity360. I'm Columbian sports editor Micah Rice, and we have a special guest today. It is Columbia River volleyball coach Breanne Smedley. Breanne, thank you for being here.
Yes, happy to be here.
All right, Breanne, local high school fans, people that follow local sports know you as a four-time state champion volleyball coach, but as we're going to talk about today, you're much more than that. You are also the co-founder of Elite Competitor, which focuses on coaching and mental health performance for girls. You also have Coach Her Game on YouTube with a lot of really informative videos, and you are a certified mental performance coach. So I guess take us they know your resume, but take us into your background, especially how you were at one point a accomplished high school volleyball player who walked away briefly from the sport only to come back.
Yeah, I guess the story does start in middle school and high school. As many coaches, have played the sport, and that's kind of where their love starts. But yeah, I played sports kind of all growing up and ended up being really tall really early. And so I had a lot of coaches that were like, you need to play basketball or you need to play volleyball. And tried basketball first, was like, that's a no-go. I do not like the people's armpits in my face. And so I started playing volleyball, and I started getting kind of good by the time I was a senior in high school. I had great coaches. My coach in high school, Shannon Wyckoff Hunt, who is from the area too. She coached at WSU for a bit. And so just got a lot of good coaching early on, a lot of good club coaches. And I started getting noticed by colleges and getting recruited and things like that. And I was like, oh man, this is, what would seem like would be kind of the goal and the dream, but really what you wouldn't be able to see was kind of behind the scenes. I was struggling a lot with the pressure of the sport, kind of what would I now know as the mental side of things. And I was like, I don't really want to do this for another 4 to 5 years, deal with all of this pressure. And, I was kind of a perfectionist. So it was kind of struggling with everything had to be perfect, but nothing is when you play sports. So I was always struggling with that. And so I walked away. I ended up going though to a college here in Washington, Western Washington University, and just so happens they were really good at volleyball. So every, my freshman year there, I went to every single one of their games. I was their super fan, and they made it to the national championship that year. And I'm oh my gosh, I miss the sport so much, because it really wasn't volleyball that I was burned out at. I've told everybody I was burned out. It was just, I just didn't really know how to handle the mental side. So anyways, I reached out to the coach and just kind of told her my story, and she asked me to come try out. Well, it wasn't really a tryout. She was like, come practice with the team. And so I practiced with the team. She called me into her office afterwards, and she offered me a walk-on spot on the team. And I was like, I don't care. I'll pay you to be a part of this, because I just miss it so much. And being a part of that team was really, transformative for me, because she's a phenomenal coach, phenomenal program, but also she cared more. Obviously she cared a lot about the sport, but she brought in resources to kind of help with other sides of the game. We had some mental performance tools and things that we could use. I started getting interested, so I studied it in my undergrad a little bit, and started to kind of put the pieces together that oh, this is all what I'm experiencing is very normal, pressure, nerves, comparison, coming back from mistakes. That's what all athletes go through, and there's actual tools to be able to handle this. So so I started kind of getting interested in that. By the time I was a senior, Diane, our coach, actually called me back into her office right before my senior season. And I was like, am I getting cut for my senior year? And she was like, no, we want to offer you a full ride for your senior season. And I was starting by the end of that season. I was loving the sport. And I kind of really fell in love with the fact that coaching, teaching, this side of the game, I was always just really interested in it. So I became a teacher right out of college, taught for 10 years, and coached right out of college too. I didn't know what I was doing, but I came here and took over at Columbia River in 2016. And shortly into that coaching, in my coaching career here, I was like, my girls are struggling with the same things that I was. And it took a couple of seasons where we lost games that I really hate hearing this as a coach, but that we should have won. Where like we had talented teams. We would get to this situation where it was like a loser out, winner to state situation. We would lose in a reverse sweep. And I'm like, what just happened? Like that was a total mental breakdown that we had. And so I went back to become certified in mental performance coaching so that I could teach some of these skills to my team. And that's really where it started. The girls started taking to it right away. That was about 7 years ago. And obviously it hasn't hurt us. We can talk more about that, but there's been a lot. I mean, we've had a lot of success over the past several years. And when I talk to the girls, they'll tell you too, like a lot of that comes down to how we deal with pressure and, you know, how we stay mentally strong in moments where it's hard not to. And yeah, so I left teaching about 4 years ago because our company became really big. I started actually created a company so that other athletes could experience these skills too. So now that's where the Elite Competitor was born, and it really took off. And yeah, so I left teaching to run this full time.
Yeah, I feel like I've been there for the ride. I remember I remember being there at St. Martin's College in Lacey when the team first started to become kind of a mainstay at the state tournament, and then seeing the next leap be taken where suddenly 4 in a row, that's up there with the best runs of any high school volleyball program in the state. What do you remember being your lessons to battle performance anxiety? Because it's so natural, whether, you know, I think we have this ideal of, oh, nothing, unflappable, but that's just not reality.
Yeah, I remember learning, and now I know more, like as what I, you know, doing what I do and how I help athletes. But first of all, just normalizing that you're supposed to react with nervousness to something that matters to you. And that response in your body is like biological, and it's supposed to happen. It's what your body does to prepare you for the moment. And so part of that is like, oh, okay, that's good. I'm actually ready for this. And so things that we teach athletes, and some things that I learned early on too, was that nervousness and excitement actually feel the same in your body. It's like registers the same, your heart beats faster, you got sweaty palms, all that. But it's all with how you label it. So if we can label this as I'm excited and I'm ready, like even that just helps kind of with the mindset shift around it. And so that right out the gate is great. But a lot of times what happens with athletes, and this is what would happen with me, is I just would put a lot of pressure on the outcome. So it was like I had to win. Like it wasn't going to be good enough if we didn't come away with a win. And that doesn't, like, sometimes when I talk to athletes, and we experience this in our program too, it's like we're not saying that you should be any less competitive. And I tell athletes that one of the most competitive things you can do is release the control of the outcome, because you honestly can't control it when you come down to it, when it comes down to it. So releasing your grip on that and being in the present moment and just going like play by play is another thing. So like mindfulness is something that I learned in college too. Like, okay, how do we just be here and not let our thoughts go backwards or too far in the future?
I feel like there's a bigger openness in coaching to talk about mental preparation, but how far do you think that's come, and how much farther do you think it should go? Because obviously if there was a whole understanding and acceptance of the mental side of the game, there wouldn't be the need for what you do at the Elite Competitor. How much do you think the coaching profession has progressed in that area?
I think that there's more awareness, but honestly, coaches aren't like given the tools to actually teach it. And we could argue this. I don't think that it's necessarily the coach's like 100% responsibility. I mean, that's why we have really easy ways for coaches to literally plug and play. Like here's how you teach a failure recovery system. Here's how you teach, a pre-performance routine. It's like, play the video. Okay, that's good. Because a lot of times in coaching, it's like, where's the time? Like we're not taught. We know it's important. We tell athletes all the time they need to be mentally tough. You need to shake it off. You need to focus on the next play. So we say all the right things, but we don't actually give them the skills to do that. So when coaches are like, shake it off, next play, all of that, like you can say that, but if they don't have the skill to do it, it's like telling somebody to go hit a slide and they're like, oh, okay. Like I don't know how to do that. And so I think that there's been a lot more awareness. And I think there's awareness in coaches now that are like, yeah, we need them to be mentally strong, but like, I don't know how to teach it. And I don't know what to do. And so, yeah, it's tough because also when I first started looking into this, and it was mostly because of necessity. I was like, this clearly, like, we're a clearly talented team. Like, this isn't the missing piece. And we train really well. And, like, it's really a mental thing. Like, I don't really want to give up practice time to do this. We have to like also do the fundamentals. And so I think coaches are in this kind of tough spot where it's like they need athletes to be mentally strong and they need them to have the skills, but they're not trained and they lack time to be able to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, as I understand it, you block out a time at your practice at the start, is it? Where
Yes.
you have kind of the visualization and the goal setting, and how do you notice that impacting your team, that time that you set aside?
Yeah. Well, first of all, our practices are a lot more efficient because I'm not, athletes are coming in from all that they've done that day, all the things that have happened in the hallways and at school and all that. And then we throw them into this like competitive environment and expect them just to like go, And so giving them, and we can go into kind of what I do too, if you're, a lot of coaches are curious, like, how does this actually look?
Sure.
But it's like a 10-minute thing. And I now willingly give up 10 minutes so that I don't have to spend 20 minutes trying to like get them to focus in practice. So I do see an increased level of focus. Part of what we do in the visualization and like their little journal things that they do is helping them focus on like what, not necessarily their goals, but it gives them a purpose for practice too. So it kind of like focuses their brain on like, all right, here's what I want to accomplish today. Here's what I'm working towards as an athlete. And our brain has a negativity bias. So it's always looking for all the things that could go wrong and are going wrong. And so part of our daily mindset routine is like forcing them to, we say hunt the good. Like you have to find evidence that you're becoming the athlete that you want to become, that things are going the way that you want it to go. Like it's a little bit of law of attraction type of thing too. So I've noticed that they're creating more of like the results that they want too. They're working harder because they're trying to find evidence for, what they want to have happen. So anyways, stuff like that is good. I spend less time coaching the emotional side of the game because again, if you invest a little bit of time so that they can regulate their emotions on their own, then you don't have to spend as much time doing that. We have more of a common language. So especially like, this is more in-game stuff, but I can tell them like, do your snapback routine or like say your reset word and they know what that means instead of me just being like, get your head back in the game. I don't know.
I noticed, I think that your program had cleared a big hurdle. I think it was right before your first state title, and you had lost the district championship match to Ridgefield, another team that had been at the pinnacle of volleyball statewide. I remember you said something after about there's such things as good losses.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of impart that wisdom and balance when someone might be a perfectionist? I imagine you've had high performers that come through your program who deal with the negative element of perfectionism. And so how do you get a perfectionist to not tie their entire self-worth into the outcome?
Yeah, that's tough work there. But yeah, in our program, we do have a lot of high performers on the volleyball court, but also in the classroom. So we have that combination of like really smart girls who are in IB and taking challenging classes and just like excelling in the classroom too. And sometimes that combination can lend itself to like things need to be perfect everywhere. And so what we talk about a lot when it comes to perfectionism is that you have, this might sound weird, but you have voices in your head, okay? And these voices they all have kind of a purpose. This is actually kind of pulling on internal family systems, if you're familiar with that framework. But you have a perfectionist voice, and that voice is there to keep you safe, to help you, and it thinks it's being really helpful. But sometimes that voice is not helpful, right? It'll tell you things that like aren't true even, and it'll just kind of derail you. So we help athletes like, okay, how can we recognize when that voice is getting really loud? And oftentimes it gets really loud after a loss. It gets really loud in games that matter a lot. And so even just the awareness of like, oh, that's my perfectionist voice. And that voice doesn't have to be in the driver's seat of the car. So I tell athletes like, okay, who's driving the car? Is it you, or is it, we even give our perfectionist voice like a name, like we personify it. Some athletes are, I remember one athlete was like, my perfectionist voice is that receptionist from Monsters, Inc. I think it's Roz. I don't know. I'm like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Like she's got a super whiny voice and is not helpful. And so is Roz driving the car right now, or are you? And just that awareness of like, okay, there's this part of me that has helped me, because a lot of times perfectionists like have a great work ethic, you know, and they have high standards for themselves. And so what are the things that are helpful? And then what's not? And can we take that voice when it's being, you know, not helpful to you? How can we change it to maybe what a really helpful coach would say? And you can be your inner coach. It's like, okay, I'm right now, that voice is telling me that like, because we lost, you know, I suck, or we're never going to be able to win state, and blah, 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 all these other things. And so the awareness of like that voice is being really loud, and then kind of changing it a little bit is a skill that we teach. And so that's typically not something that, I mean, I wasn't taught that. But it is helpful, because it's like, all right, there's a purpose for it, but part of it's not helpful. So.
I think one of the, you could call it a side effect, or maybe a co-conspirator with perfectionism, is burnout. And you see that, I think, in sports that have a really rigorous club scene, in addition to a high school season. And volleyball is certainly one of those where you see athletes go almost directly from the high school season, no break, into the club season. How do you guard against burnout with a schedule and a calendar that can be so demanding?
Yeah, I really worry about my athletes with that schedule. And you know, because it's a lot. You've got to love the sport to be able to maintain a schedule like that. And I know that not all of my program is doing that. I would say probably half the girls play club, and the ones that do, I am like, I don't try and add. We do have an off-season program, and we have opportunities. But when I first started coaching, I mean, it has changed. It's gotten way more intense, even in just the past 10 years that I've been coaching here. I used to have a very rigorous off-season plan, you know, like program and it was like, you need to be there. We're tracking attendance, you know, starting in January, and made this huge deal of it. And now I'm like, I don't know how these girls would ever be able to keep up with, you know, you're practicing 3 hours a week. Some of these girls are traveling multiple hours, maybe not multiple, but like, you know, over the course of the week, it adds up. They've got tournaments, and then I'm asking them also to be here with me, putting extra stress on their bodies. And, you know, and so that's just knowing kind of your program as a coach, like what do they need? And so for me, I'm like, okay, we're going to taper off a little bit in the off season. The stuff that we do is more like, hey, the purpose of this is so that we can stay connected, not so that we're like beating down your body even more. Right. And then in the summer, we ramp it up a little bit more. But a big, like one of my coaching values is joy. And I talk about that a lot with the girls. And honestly, I'm like, if we're not having fun, and I hate, yeah, I'm very competitive, and like I'm Enneagram 3 all the way, if you're familiar with that. Like I am very competitive. And so sometimes it's hard for me to say, like, if we're not having fun, what are we, but like, it needs to be at their core, like this is worth it, you know? And so our practice structure is like, we work hard. It's all timed out, but we also make sure that we are having fun with the things that we're doing, and we're bringing in our personality. You know, Luke is my assistant, and I think that we balance each other really well too. And we make sure that we're like, you know, we're meeting girls at where they're at. We're joking with them, and you know, and they feel like it's something that they want to come to. And we know that athletes who enjoy their sport, play their sport longer, and do better. And girls right now are quitting the sport at 2 times the rate of boys. And a lot of times that is due to the perfectionism and the burnout and these things that are preventable. And so I'm not saying that we're like goofy all the time, but like, you know, we're challenging, but also caring. So we're trying to strike that balance while also peppering in like, all right, let's let's make sure that this is fun because we're spending a lot of time here.
Yeah, I was gonna say that balance is really everything. A different description of balance can kind of go when I look at your championship teams recently of how you had star players. Obviously, Lauren Dreves had an amazing sophomore season at Auburn. Sydney Dreves played as a freshman at Boise State, and you go even back to Riley Reeves. But behind those star players, those teams just had an amazing supporting cast. You had setters stepping in and starting from day one, and role players all over that were just so critical to your success. So my question is, how do you get players that maybe aren't in the spotlight to accept their roles as whether it be the setter or the girl that is diving for, kind of being someone who embraces that sort of unglamorous role on the court?
Yeah, and I would love to say that I do this perfectly all the time, and I know I don't. But there are things that I've learned over the years and systems that we put in place to try and help this, because you're really only as good, and I'm not saying good physically, like you're only as good as the player who feels the least included, if that makes sense. Like belonging is so important on any team, but especially on, I wouldn't even say for girls teams, like boys teams too. Like belonging and psychological safety is like the number one predictor of like the success of a team. And so if somebody doesn't feel like they belong or they care on the team, and I've definitely had teams where I've had girls who have told me they didn't. And, I've had to really look at myself as a coach and be like, okay, how can we make sure that every role is, every role has value. You can say that until, every role has value, but then like, how does that actually feel? And so, yes, we talk about it. I mean, I was a role player in college. Like I was literally a blocking sub. Like I would go in, maybe for one play, maybe get a touch on the ball, maybe not, come out. And, I just have to like, okay, this is what my role is. And so at the beginning of the season, I sit down with all my players. We do a little bit of a longer meeting. It's called a player impact plan meeting. So they do a little intake form that I've created for them. I take those responses. I put together a form where I talk about what their strengths are, where I see them fit on the team, what their role is. Like I used to be very specific about what their role is on this team as I see it right now, what playing time is associated with that role, because it's super hard for athletes to be like in the dark about where do they stand? Are they going to play today? Or are they not? And so even if it's like, you don't have a starting role and you're probably going to play most likely in, these types of matches, at least they know what to expect and try to be really clear on what that is. Their plan for improvement, things like that. And then actually share that with their parents too. So I send their parents an email with this document in it. So their parents, because sometimes things don't always.
we know parents can be an issue sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's not even like necessarily their fault. Sometimes the players don't tell them, and then the parents are like, "Well, why the heck aren't you playing?" And the athlete's like, "Like, okay, well, if we make it clear, then we're all on the same page here." So they get that at the beginning of the season, usually after like our first jamboree or something like that. And then what I started to do is build in biweekly check-ins with every player. So a lot of times, unintentionally, as coaches, we spend more time and give more feedback to the players, who are starting. And you just have to be really aware as a coach of your bias in that way, even where you stand on the court or like where, what, and we want to make sure that part of everybody feeling included is that your feedback is equitable. And I felt like the only way, I used to have this whole like open door policy, I have an open door policy. I thought I was like, that's a good thing, right? Like you can come talk to me whenever you want. Players don't come talk to you. But, if they have a problem, they're not going to immediately go to you. Well, first of all, as a head coach, as much as I try, they're intimidated, and they're, as much as I try to not be that, and I say like, you can come to talk to me whenever you want. When they have a problem, what they do first is they will go talk to their friends. They'll ruminate on it. They'll create stories about it, and then by the time they come to you, like 3 weeks later, once they've worked up the courage, then it's like 10 times worse than it probably would have been. So what I do to kind of get ahead of that is every player has a standing meeting with me and with Luke every other week. So they're like 5-minute check-ins where we check in on their player impact plan that we create for them. we ask them like, what's going well? What are you working on? What questions do you have? And they know that they have that meeting with us where they're going to get feedback. They can ask questions. And players have given me feedback that like they love having that on the schedule. And it's equitable, like I said. So then it's not, I'm only dealing with issues, or I'm only giving feedback to people who are, constantly out on the court. Every player gets that interaction. So that's where we can also reaffirm, like, this is what your role is. This is how important your role is. I think as coaches, like where we give awards and where we give recognition is really important. That can reaffirm, like, if you say every role matters, are you recognizing how that role made a difference or what the impact was in that last game? So we give awards, every week, and I really make sure that I'm trying to recognize, like, hey, the bench and what they did, their contribution to this. So those are just little ways. And like I said, this was born out of not doing it right for, especially the beginning of my coaching season, because I'm like, you know your role, right? And oh, you don't? Oh, okay. Thought it was obvious, but no, it's not.
Well, that almost goes hand in hand with how do you deal with team drama? Because I imagine, I've done enough interviews where people say, oh, we all get along, we're all best friends and everything. And yeah, that might be the case sometimes, but it's not the case all the time. How do you approach that issue that every coach probably has to deal with, where maybe there's a clique or a group or someone has an issue with someone? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things as a coach. I think if I can crack this code, then, man, I think all of our issues would be gone. Yeah, it's tough because that's the biggest challenge of a coach, is to get all of these personalities, this cast of characters that we have, to all work together for this common goal. And so you are like a master of personalities and dynamics, and like how do we get everybody pulling in the same direction? So a lot of this groundwork is laid early, as a lot of the systems are in our season. But we have something called a leadership core in our program, and these are leaders who have identified themselves. Actually, they have to go through an application process to be a leader, in our program. And our leadership core is usually between like 7 to 8 girls who are upperclassmen, and they're in charge of a squad on the team. So they get like 5 to 6 girls assigned to them. And that's where they can like practice their leadership skills. But they're also like, this is your tight knit group of girls that you have for the season. You're their leader. They come to you. It's also kind of selfish, because I'm like, if you have a question, go to your squad leader before you come to me, because, your squad leader probably knows what color shirt we're wearing today. And so they get to practice those leadership skills. And the girls that are in their squad also automatically get plugged in and feel a sense of belonging. And again, some of the drama on the team, what I have found is the source of it is if people don't feel like they belong, they start to cause things, right? Badmouth people or whatever. It's like an insecurity. And typically, if they're feeling insecure or feeling like a lack of confidence, one of the results of that is to bring other people down too. So knowing that those two things, confidence, psychological safety, are like kind of the drivers of team drama, how can we get ahead of those first? So the squads are really great for that. We also have like a weekly meeting cadence with their squads, where they're kind of getting issues out. Like their squads will bring issues to squad leaders meet, how are we going to deal with this? And this teaches them how to problem solve. And if they come to me with an issue that they've identified in the program, some sort of drama that might be kind of bubbling under the surface, they have to come to me with a proposed solution or something they've already tried, so that they can kind of get into this idea of like, okay, how can we actually move towards progress? So there's some of that in place. And then because we have leaders in place, if there's something that pops up, then usually I hear about it from the squad leaders. And we go through the process of like, okay, what should we do about this? Is this a coach thing? Is this a safety thing? Is this a bullying? And of course it's like, all right, we got to just get in and do something. But if it's something else, then I try and have the athletes like take ownership a little bit of like, peer to peer is typically better, unless it's an issue of discipline and all that. Then it's obviously coach. But peer to peer, like, hey, somebody's not working hard in practice. And we have values established and all the norms, everything that they should be. This is what it looks like. So it's very clear if somebody's not like doing that. Then I try and do peer to peer stuff. The other thing about team drama, though, is, like I said, when athletes feel connected and they know each other, they're going to play harder for each other. And you have to build that in too. So we do something on Friday. It's called Open Circle. And so I get my varsity team together and we share. It's like a 15-minute meeting. And we share things that are not about volleyball. So sometimes I'll do simple like roses and thorns, what's on your heart, what's on your head, hero hardship highlight, like things like that, where they're just sharing a little bit about themselves that's not related to volleyball. And so we know that, and Breanne Brown like talks a lot about this, when we can trust each other, then, likely it's less, if we're coming from a common ground, less likely drama is probably going to pop up, but we can't trust each other if we don't know each other. So it's just an opportunity to do that. So I don't know, that's a long way to just say, like, we try and put things in place. We also have a conflict resolution process. We say, like, talk to people, not about people. Here is how, and we're dealing with teenagers. Like, the adults don't even know how to, like, handle conflict.
No, we don't.
Like how to address somebody who, like, you think said something bad about you behind your back. And like, so sometimes you have to teach them how to have that conversation. That's really hard. It's hard I'm even like, oh my gosh, okay, here we go. We're going to have to and teach them, like, to say, we give them sentence starters. Like, can you help me understand what you meant by this? Or I noticed this, and this is what it made me think. This is a story I'm telling myself. Can you help me understand this? And so we also have to teach, we have to teach the girls, like, this is how you talk to somebody if you're trying to resolve conflict. So,
well, the outline you just gave of feeling like you belong and feeling like you can trust your teammates, that might go to kind of explaining my next question is, when you have someone come into a leadership position on your team who's maybe an introvert, who maybe is soft-spoken, who maybe has never been in a position where she has to, address something head on. How do you develop a leader from someone who is quiet, or how do you kind of speak or develop that in a team or a class that is full of quiet girls? Maybe that's what you get.
Yeah, and sometimes that's hard.
Yeah.
The thing about leadership is that our culture values the loud, assertive leader, and it doesn't as much outwardly value the leader who is a little more introverted or, a little bit more soft-spoken. When one of the initial, like, leadership things that we do with our leadership core is recognizing what your personality is, how you like to lead, and that we need all of them. We do various things, but maybe you've heard of, like, the DISC assessment, DISC.
Explain that if you would.
Yeah, so it's one of the many, it's basically a personality assessment. And D, you get D, I, S, and C. D is like the dominant, kind of like assertive personality leadership style. I is influence. It's like I like relationships. I'm, kind of the life of the party. I really like everyone to have a good time. S is steady. So no high highs or high lows, just like very, very steady. And then C, I think it's like conscientious. I don't know. I might be wrong about that, but the more analytical, like, I want to know the what behind the why, all of that. So anyways, they kind of can get an idea of, like, oh, we're different in the way that we lead. And it would suck if we had a team of all Ds, like everyone would be like super assertive, yelling at each other. And then it also wouldn't be great if we had a team probably of all S's, that would be a little bit, yeah. And I haven't actually had a team where I've had luckily there's been a little bit of everything. But for my, like, more quiet introvert type personalities, I would say that's actually me too. That's not how I probably look when I'm coaching, because you kind of have to step in and be what you need to be. But I am more observant. And I tell athletes who are like this, that this is your superpower. Like, you observe, you get the read of the room, you see things that people don't see. You process, so you take your time to like come to a decision, and that's a good thing. And so basically it's just teaching them that it's okay, but you also have to kind of lean on your strengths. And I assign also, I kind of have like a list of leadership roles. So I list out like kind of more tangible ways that you can lead. Like, are you the connection leader? Do you want to be the hype person? Do you want to be like the accountability person? I don't know. There's just like 15 different things. And I have them kind of identify like, this is actually where I would feel comfortable leading, so that they can have more of a tangible thing that they're like, I'm in charge of. If I see somebody's left out, like, I'm going to be the one to go. Obviously everybody can do that, but like, I am really taking ownership of scanning and making sure, like, if somebody doesn't have a partner, I'm going to go and like be their partner, things like that. So yeah, that's one of the ways we try and do it.
Well, I think it's fascinating that the focus of your coaching with elite competitors is geared toward girls, and you're married to a coach. Your husband Brett coached football at Columbia River. Did you and he talk about different ways of communicating to girls versus communicating to guys, and what kind of maybe goes into that? I hate to generalize because everyone's different, but is that something that you kind of take into account and have talked about the differences in coaching guys versus girls?
We have talked about that, and it's interesting. Have you heard the quote that like, what is it? Guys need to win to feel connected, or something like that. Girls need to feel connected to win.
No, I haven't.
I don't know. I'm thinking I'm getting that wrong. I don't know. There's a version of that like, essentially, I was talking about like, a lot of times girls teams need to feel like, do you have my back? Do I belong? In order for us to be successful. Whereas like boys teams are like, okay, we need to like win in order to feel connected. I don't know if I agree with that, but I just have heard that.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, it's more of like a cultural thing, that it's more, we think that our guys are just, can take more of like some rough, I don't know what, like yelling and all of that. I think that's just like such a stereotype, when in reality, I think good coaching is good coaching, and really that comes down to teaching and making sure that people feel valued and belonged in your program. So while we've talked about it, I don't think we have a conclusive, like, I know Anson Dorrance does, like, he was a soccer coach at UNC. We do something called the competitive cauldron, like kind of based on it's like a technique, scoring system that we use in our gym. And he talks a lot about like the differences between girls and boys coaching. He did both. And kind of what he said was, girls just really need to feel like, I'm part of this, and, you've got my back. And, that's all I can really say from experience.
Interesting. Well, this is a fascinating conversation. I hope I would be the first to recommend this to any young coach or even a veteran coach, because I think that's one of the fascinating things about the profession is it's always evolving. People are always learning, and it has applications to people who maybe aren't athletically inclined. I think when you talk about perfectionism, I have a daughter in college right now who definitely is a perfectionist when it comes to taking tests and everything. So yeah.
Oh yeah, this goes well beyond sports, like these skills for sure.
Tell people where they can find your material.
Yeah, so for coaches, we have YouTube, podcast, all the socials are at Coach Her Game. So we have that. We have a free training for coaches at Coach Free Training. This is where I teach kind of the like simple mental training skills that athletes or that coaches can be teaching their athletes. So these are like the 3 big things that I teach in our program. And we also talk about our program for coaches on that training. So that's at coachfreetraining.com. We also have a whole arm of our business. I mean, we found our business with the parent side of our program. So so for parents that are listening, our podcast is Raising Elite Competitors, and we've got a lot of resources around parenting. athletes and kind of what to say, what not to say, the car ride home, like all of that. So. Yeah.
Well, Breanne Smedley, thank you so much for spending some time dropping wisdom. It's fascinating to me. And thank you. And I know next fall season will be here before we know it.
Oh, yeah, it's right on the corner. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.